Gentlemen, welcome to the video. Today we're setting up the sight tape for my hunting bow setup, and I'm going to walk you through all the steps that I go through to set up a sight tape on basically any slider sight, but today specifically the Fast Eddy from Spot Hogg. Okay, so every Fast Eddy sight and pretty much every slider sight on the market is going to come with this little packet of sight tapes, and these are very, very important because they're going to allow you to set up a chart on the actual slider of your sight that's going to give you your impact yardages for every position of this sight housing. That's going to allow you to do a few things. Number one, you're going to have exact measurements on yardage when you're up in a tree stand, and you're not necessarily going to have to gap shoot between pins if you do not want to. Number two, this is going to allow you to practice at extended ranges past the standard 40 or 50 yards that you might get with a fixed pin sight. It's going to allow you to become a better archer overall and show you some issues in your form that you might not see inside of the 40-yard practice range. Now, Spot Hogg and any other company that comes out with yardage tapes need two data points from you. That is going to be your 20-yard and your 60-yard zero for your bow shooting your specific arrow. Now, before we set up the 20-yard zero, which is the first step, we need to make sure of a few things. Number one, the center shot of your bow with your arrow sitting in your rest has got to be perfect. If it's not perfect, you're going to have issues with bow tuning, and your zero is going to drift left or right as you extend the range. It's going to drive you nuts. Ask me how I know. Number two, all three axes of adjustment on your sight need to be dialed in and leveled. If they are not, you're going to run into issues with the same idea out to extended ranges. Number three, you need to select an arrow and you have to stick with it. If you change arrows throughout this process, or if you change arrows after you have this sight tape set up, it will no longer be accurate. And that is because these algorithms bake in the arrow weight, which is then baking in the arrow speed to give you its position on the actual dial. Now we can start shooting at the 20-yard range. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so for this specific sight, I kind of have an idea of where my 20-yard zero is going to be already, but I wanted to point this out really quick. You have macro and micro adjustments on this wheel. Your micro adjustments are actually physically spinning the wheel. Your macro adjustment are two bolts that you can move this entire sight housing up and down with. If you want to get the most amount of dial out of your sight, you want to set it to its highest setting first, and then macro adjust using those bolts to get your 20-yard zero close. Then you can micro adjust with the actual wheel. For me, I don't really care about that because once I get out to about 100 yards, my fletchings start to make contact with the sight housing and it throws off my arrow flight. So for me, I'm going, roughly in the middle there. If you want to maximize your dial, set the sight as high as possible so that you have the farthest to go down before you run out of adjustment. But the goal for right now is actually just to find a 20-yard zero and start shooting. So let's go ahead and send a few arrows and see where we land. All right, let's go take a quick look. All right, so the good news is we got a nice cluster of arrows here at 20. The bad news is I'm aiming here. I'm hitting maybe 3 inches low, 1.5 inches to the right. So we'll go ahead back to the firing line. Oh my goodness, dense targets. And move our sight accordingly to get this impact point moved up and into center. All right, so those arrows did end up hitting low and to the right. So in order to remedy this, you need to move your sight down and to the right as well. You always chase your arrows with your pins. So to do that, I'm just going to take my wheel here and drop my sight lower, just like that, as you can see. And then I'm actually going to, I can kind of come in tight here and show you. There's this little detent lever here that you're going to flip out to its loosened position. Oh my goodness, tough. Who tightened that? Me. And then I'm going to use this little micro adjust clicker right here to move the sight housing to the right, which is going to be a counterclockwise rotation on this. So I'm going to give it 10 clicks. 10. And then reset. Now we're just going to shoot again and see what these changes did downrange. Okay, so in order to make that change, we're going to move the sight housing up just ever so slightly, and to the left again, just very slightly. We're only talking about an inch here, so maybe 5 clicks. Okay, so in the interest of not smashing any more arrows or breaking fletchings off, we're going to call that good. I might give it a few more clicks to the left, but I feel like out at more extended ranges, we're going to get a better idea of the left and right zero on this sight. So I'm going to go ahead and set that as level for 20 yards, and I will show you what comes next. Inside of this packet, you will find your calibration tape, which looks like this one right here. We're going to go ahead and cut that out and paste it onto the bow with this section right up here where it says 20 being set to the 20-yard 0. And it should look something like that. And then we'll just go ahead and place that 20-yard calibration mark right there. Okay, with the 20-yard pin dialed into where I want it, we're going to start hunting for that 60-yard 0. I've got a target out here behind me at 40. This is where I'm going to start, just so that I don't end up sending a bunch of arrows into the atmosphere trying to guess at where the 60-yard mark is going to be. Typically I'll do 40, then I'll go to 50, then I'll go to 60, and then I'll get really exact on the height for my 60-yard groupings. Let's go ahead and take some shots at 40, see where we land. Looks like I'm right inside the bottom circle. That was a great guess. Alright, welcome to the 60-yard line. This is where you really do need to kind of focus up and be making nice and clean shots. Don't be afraid to throw away your outliers. Don't trust shots that didn't feel good to you, or you noticed a lot of sort of jankiness in your sight picture or your form. If it feels bad, just X that arrow out of the group and count it as an outlier. 60 yards, I'm just going to add a little more dial into this. Literally, it's arbitrary. I know that I'm a little bit low at 50, which means I'm going to have to add quite a bit of dial to get up to 60. So let's go ahead and lob an arrow in there at 60 and see where we land. Alright, so here's the group aiming for center and hitting all the way down here. So obviously the sight needs quite a bit more dialing. This arrow on the far right, that is where the pin was floating when I broke that shot. So I'm going to count that one as, not necessarily part of the group. And as you can see, I'm kind of erring maybe slightly to the right overall with these other two. So maybe I can add a couple clicks left, but I don't necessarily feel like I have to yet. So I'm just going to add a little more elevation to my sight and then shoot again. Okay. Alright, so this arrow is a throwaway. Felt that one, that was a terrible shot. These three are legit. This one I spotted from back at the firing line, and I made an adjustment to this group here, and we're in the blue. I want to go slightly lower, but barely any at all. And we'll shoot it one more time, and that should be our number. Alrighty, folks. I am going to call this good. We got, arrows on left and right side of the dot and one in the middle. These three shots all felt really confident, really clean. So I am going to trust them, and I'm going to call it good, zeroed at 60 for my top pin. The next step is very simple, so let's go back and check out the dial on that sight. So as you can see here, I was shooting top pin at 60, which puts my 60-yard mark at about 11, between 10 and 12. So if I open up my little booklet of sight tapes that are supplied with spot hog sights. Oh, this is embarrassing. I'm missing the number 11 in my booklet because I've used it before, apparently. Okay, so as you can see, all these tapes are numbered here at the top. And unfortunately, when I flip through this sheet and look for the tapes, you'll notice that I get to this page where 11 should be, and it's not, because I've used it before. So I actually don't have the tape here to show you how to put it on, but essentially you would just cut out the one that you want, and then I always do it off of the 60 instead of the 20, because the 60 is actually a little bit more dialed in, a little more exact than the 20. So I'll take this sight tape, cut it out, and I will find the 60 mark on this one, for example. On this one, for example, you can see the 60 mark right here. I'm going to cut that out and tape the 60 mark where that top pin goes. And that's going to give you a dial that you can essentially dial all the way out to 100 yards and then shoot exact, per yard increments between any pin that you want. The reason a sight tape is really useful is because if I have a deer, say at 38 yards, and I have the time to dial my sight to exactly 38 yards, I would rather do that than just hold my bottom pin, which is about 35 yards, a little bit high. It's a more exact measurement. It's going to give you more ethical shots in the field, and also it's going to allow you to shoot targets at longer range than where that bottom pin is, which is not only just fun, but it's going to make you a better archer. Now, as is true for sighting in basically anything, including like rifles and scopes and stuff like that, you're going to want to verify this tape. You're going to want to set a target up at 32 yards and dial to exactly 32. You're going to want to set up a target at 28 yards and dial to exactly 28. Set a target at 70, 80 yards and verify that that tape is accurate for your bow. And once it is, my biggest piece of advice is don't touch anything. Because at this point, you are very, very lethal, very, very accurate out to 100 yards, wherever the extreme of that sight tape might take you. And it gives you a ton of potential going into hunting season. And if you're a target shooter, gives you a ton of potential for target shooting as well. Thank you guys so much as always for watching the video. Jump down in the comments section if you have any questions, comments, concerns about how I set up the sight tape here today. I tend to get back to pretty much everybody down there. Again, thank you guys so much for watching as always, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.